have one of the fastest small-tire street cars in the country. My car hasn't ever been outrun by any other state other than the 405. There's not a small-tire car that's traveled to Oklahoma.
Chuck Seitsinger's life fell apart while he was lying in a hospital bed. What happened next led to arrests, courtroom battles, and one of the most controversial chapters in Street Outlaws history. But the full story is far more complicated than most fans realize. So what really happened to Chuck Seitsinger? And how did one of the 405's toughest racers end up fighting battles far beyond the track? Join us as we uncover the shocking truth behind Chuck Seitsinger's life on and off the street. When Street Outlaws came for him. Street Outlaws premiered on the Discovery Channel on June 10, 2013. And from the very first episode, it was clear this was not another car show where presenters in matching gear stood in front of glossy vehicles and explained horsepower numbers to people who already knew them. This was Raw, a group of actual street racers from Oklahoma City, the 405 crew, competing on real roads, with real money, with real stakes, and with the kind of genuine animosity toward each other that only develops between people who have been racing the same streets for 20 years. Chuck Seitsinger was part of the original cast from day one. He was there at the beginning, death trap and all, one of the founding members of a show that would run for over a decade and spawn multiple spin-offs across different cities and different formats. And his personality on screen was exactly what his reputation on the street had already established. He is, by multiple accounts from cast members and production crew alike, the person in the 405 with the shortest temper and the least patience. The guy who will go from 0 to confrontation faster than his Mustang goes from 0 to 60, which is saying something. He even got into a physical confrontation with his co-host Boosted GT in the middle of a live racing event, on camera, in front of the crowd, because something happened that his temper decided needed to be addressed immediately. The producers, to their eternal credit or eternal cynicism, depending on how you look at it, understood exactly what they had. Chuck Seitsinger, on camera, was appointed television. Every time he was in a close race, every time someone ran their mouth to the wrong person, every time a decision was made that he disagreed with, you were watching to see what happened next. Not because it was manufactured, because it was real. And that realness, the unfiltered, unmediated quality of a man who genuinely cannot help reacting the way he reacts, is both what made him one of the show's most compelling characters and what eventually put him in a courtroom in Oklahoma City. The show expanded alongside him. He appeared across the original Street Outlaws series and later in Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings, the format where legal closed-course racing replaced the street action, bringing the 405 crew and their rivals to proper drag strips with spectators and different competitive rules. His death trap remained his weapon of choice across both formats, evolving through countless rebuilds and modifications as the competition around him escalated. He also owns Alternative Motorsports, a repair shop in Oklahoma, where real cars get worked on by real mechanics. And he founded Chuck Seitsinger Racing, a racing academy where people who want to go faster can learn from someone who has been going faster than almost everyone around him for 3 decades. The television show gave him visibility. The shop and the academy gave him infrastructure. And the racing gave him everything else. He had built something real. And then, July 25th, 2020 happened. What exactly happened? The phone call cost him everything. Here is where the story stops being about racing and starts being about something much more human and much more complicated. On July 2020, Chuck Seitsinger was not at a race. He was not in his shop, building anything or testing anything or getting into arguments on a Discovery Channel set. He was in an intensive care unit fighting COVID-19, which had hit him hard enough to require hospitalization. His children, 3 daughters, the people he describes consistently as the most important thing in his life, had been spending the summer with him. When he got sick, their mother took them back to her residence. And shortly after they arrived there, his kids started calling him and were telling him there were problems at their mother's house. Things were happening that he believed required a response. He made a phone call. That phone call, made from a hospital bed, from a man who was physically incapable of going anywhere or doing anything in person, was charged as 2 counts of misdemeanor offenses, making a threat of violence and placing a threatening and harassing phone call. Both offenses were documented as occurring on July 25, 2020. The legal case was filed on August 19, 2020. And then nothing happened for a year and a half. The case sat in the Oklahoma court system while Chuck Seitsinger went back to racing, back to his shop, back to his show. Death Trap kept getting rebuilt. No Prep Kings kept running events. His Instagram kept documenting the work and the racing. The legal situation was there in the background, being processed through a system that moves at its own pace, regardless of anyone's television schedule. In March 2022, the case came to its conclusion. He was supposed to appear in court that morning to sign papers for a no-contest plea on the misdemeanor, a deal that had been negotiated with the district attorney. He walked into that courtroom expecting to sign something and walk out. Instead, the judge looked at the situation and decided the agreed-upon plea was not sufficient. 1 year of probation and 60 days in jail. He had seconds to text people before they put him in a cell. He texted his team. He texted the people who needed to know he was not coming. And then he went to jail. He served 25 days of the 60-day sentence before being released. He was also required to complete 13 weeks of anger management classes and pay court costs. The case was officially closed on April 21, 2022. The day after his release, he drove to Virginia Motorsports Park in North Dinwiddie, Virginia, for the second Street Outlaws No Prep Kings event of the season. 25 days in jail, a drive from Oklahoma to Virginia, and he showed up to race. The arrest became one of the biggest headlines of Chuck Seitsinger's life, but anyone who had watched Street Outlaws from the beginning knew that his explosive personality was never something that appeared overnight. The anger was always part of the story. Here is something important to understand about how Chuck Seitsinger's temperament has functioned in the context of Street Outlaws, because it is more complicated than just watching a man with a short fuse blow up on camera. The producers of reality television shows, particularly competition-based reality shows built around alpha personalities doing dangerous things, are not passive observers of conflict. They understand conflict. They engineer situations that are likely to produce it. They know which personalities to put in proximity to each other and what topics to raise to generate the kind of volatile television that drives viewership. This is not a conspiracy. It is the documented, widely understood architecture of reality television production. Chuck Seitsinger has acknowledged this. He said publicly after his legal situation concluded that he needs to count to 500 before he reacts, that the instinct to respond immediately, to protect his people, to refuse to let anything slide, has cost him in ways that no race result ever could. He owns the behavior. He does not blame the producers for creating situations that trigger it, but he also knows, and has essentially said, that the system he was operating inside had financial incentives to see him react the way he reacts. The fans watched it for over a decade, and mostly loved it. The combination of Chuck's skill behind the wheel, he is a genuinely excellent drag racer who has won at the highest levels of his sport, and his complete inability to absorb disrespect without responding creates a character that is both compelling and frustrating in equal measure. You root for him when he races because the talent is real. You cover your eyes when the confrontation starts because you already know where it's going. He was described by one fan account as the total opposite of Chuck 55, the other Chuck in the 405, who is taller, more patient, and distinctly more down-to-earth. The contrast between the two Chucks became its own minor running element of the show. Two men who share a name and a community and almost nothing else in terms of personality. What the legal situation did was not a transformation of who Chuck Seitsinger is. It was an externally imposed consequence that arrived years after the behavior that produced it. He has said he is working on himself. He has acknowledged that reacting the way he has always reacted is not compatible with the life he is trying to build. He has been honest about the gap between what he knows he should do and what he actually does in the moment. That honesty is the thing that his fan base has consistently responded to. Not the anger. Lots of reality television personalities do performative anger for the camera. What Chuck Seitsinger does is real. And when he sits down and accounts for it on YouTube, with the cameras gone and nobody telling him what to say, that realness travels through the screen in a way that performance never quite manages. So after all of this, the jail time, the probation, the anger management, where does he actually stand with the show? And what does his future look like? The future is complicated. Death Trap is still alive. That matters because Death Trap is not just a car. It is the physical embodiment of everything Chuck Seitsinger has been building since 2001. The 1989 Ford Fox body Mustang has been rebuilt, reconfigured, re-engined, and reimagined more times than most racers reconfigure their entire operation. And it has kept winning even as the competition around it has escalated to levels that would have seemed impossible when he first started working on it. He remains active on Instagram at Street Outlaws Chuck, with 331,000 followers, posting updates on the car, the racing, and his life in a way that keeps the fan connection alive regardless of what is happening on the television side. The bio on his page reads like the man himself. It's not about the money. It's not about the fame. If you're a badass, they'll remember your name. Blunt, direct, completely free of the kind of aspirational language that publicists write for celebrities who don't sound like themselves. His shop, Alternative Motorsports, continues to operate in Oklahoma. He has maintained Chuck Seitsinger Racing as an active training operation, working with racers who want to develop the specific technical and competitive skills that 3 decades of winning at high levels has given him. The knowledge is real. The instruction is real. And the demand for both exists independently of whatever is happening with Street Outlaws in any given season. Street Outlaws itself continued airing on Discovery through 2025, running its formats and spin-offs with a roster that has shifted and evolved over the years. The 405 world that Chuck Seitsinger has been part of since 2013 is still running events, still racing, still producing the kind of competitive drama that keeps a fan base engaged across multiple seasons. His legal situation, which concluded formally in April 2022, cleared the path for continued participation, and the probation period that initially complicated his race schedule is done. But here is the thing about Chuck Seitsinger's future that nobody talks about honestly. The legal situation is resolved. The probation is over. The anger management classes are completed. But the underlying dynamic, the personality that produced the phone call, that produced the charges, that produced the 60 days in jail, has not been eliminated by a court order or a curriculum. Chuck Seitsinger still has a short fuse. He has said so himself. He is working on it. Whether working on it is enough to keep the consequences from arriving again is a question nobody can answer from the outside. What is visible from the outside is a man who has served his sentence, completed his requirements, returned to racing, maintained his businesses, kept his fan base informed through direct communication, and continued doing the thing he has been doing since he was a teenager in a garage in Oklahoma City. He did not disappear after the legal situation. He did not retreat from public view. He did not rebrand himself with a carefully managed narrative that smoothed over the rough edges. He posted a YouTube video called Chuck's Out of Jail Judges and Grudges and told his fans exactly what had happened in his own words. That is either the most self-aware or the most stubborn approach to a public legal situation that reality television has ever produced. It is possibly both simultaneously. The court delivered its verdict, and the sentence became part of Chuck Seitsinger's public record. But legal cases have endings. Lives do not. So where did Chuck Seitsinger's story go after the courtroom doors finally closed? The sentence is final, but Chuck Seitsinger is not. The legal case that started with a phone call from an ICU bed on July 25, 2020, ran through the Oklahoma court system for a year and a half, produced 2 misdemeanor convictions, a year of probation, 60 days in jail, 13 weeks of anger management, and court costs. That case was officially closed on April 21, 2022. The sentence is final. The record exists. The consequences were paid. And Chuck Seitsinger drove from jail to Virginia Motorsports Park and got back in the car. That is the entire story in 2 sentences, and it is more revealing about who he is than 100 episodes of Street Outlaws, because the show captures Chuck performing in a competitive environment where his personality is an asset. What the legal situation captures is Chuck dealing with something personal and painful and genuinely difficult. A hospitalization, a family crisis, a phone call he believed he had to make, and getting the worst outcome from a situation he handled badly. He told his audience directly that he sticks up for his friends and family, that that's how he was raised and taught, and that it might not always be the right way, and he needs to do better. He did not argue that the charges were unjust. He did not claim he was set up or treated unfairly by a system with an agenda. He said he needs to count to 500 before he reacts, and he said it on YouTube, where his 331,000 followers could hear it, and then he went back to racing. That accountability, genuine, unvarnished, without any publicist buffering it into something more palatable, is the most Chuck Seitsinger thing he could possibly have done. It is consistent with every other public action he has taken in his career. He does not perform a version of himself. He is the version of himself, full stop, and you can take it or leave it. His 3 daughters, Chelsea Catherine, Madeline Olivia, and Miranda, have been the consistent stated priority throughout every public account he has given of his life. He went to the ICU fighting COVID. His kids called. He made a phone call from a hospital bed that he believed was the only thing he could do. He paid the legal price for it. Whether you agree with how he handled the situation or not, whether a phone call from an ICU bed was the right response to whatever was happening, the motivation behind it is not difficult to understand. He was a father who believed his children needed him and couldn't get there himself. His net worth sits at approximately $650,000 to $800,000, depending on the source, built across 30 years of racing, a shop, a racing academy, and 12 seasons of television. It is not the kind of wealth that insulates you from the consequences of bad decisions. It is the kind of wealth that reflects a working man who has been good at what he does for a long time and built something sustainable from it. Death Trap is still in the shop. Chuck Seitsinger is still in Oklahoma. The 405 is still racing. The sentence was final. The man who served it is not going anywhere. And the Discovery Channel viewers who have been watching him since 2013 already know that the most interesting Chuck Seitsinger moments have never been the ones the producers planned. They have always been the ones that nobody saw coming, including, sometimes, Chuck himself. If Chuck Seitsinger had a longer fuse and a quieter personality, would anyone have watched Street Outlaws long enough to know his name in the first place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.